Mahomes, you're okay. I've been asking every guest this week, rebuild, my belief, or retool. And the answer I get from people I love at this company, well, it's just a retool. We got Mahomes. We got Reed. Brady left Belichick. Do you know why? Talent regression. The roster. Yeah, he didn't like Bill anymore, but he didn't really like Bill 10 years earlier. People get tackled in football. They age very, very quickly. Kansas City has gone from, hey, we don't really need wide receivers. Kelsey and Mahomes will figure it out. To, we may finish sub 500. Andy Reid is 67. Travis Kelsey's going to retire. Chris Jones won't. He'll be expensive, but he's not the player he used to be. George Karlaftis is a really good pass rusher, but he's probably a little overpaid. His cap hit much bigger next year. Rashee Rice, not dependable, immature, gets banged up. Josh Simmons, the left tackle, injury issues, some personal issues ongoing. In life and in football, you get a dose of reality sometimes. And Kansas City, for 7 years, got every green light driving to work. They were just winning close, come from behind. They got a green light the entire drive to work for 7 years. Now they're stuck in traffic. And this roster, and they've taken some risks. Josh Simmons was not on every board. Rashee Rice, not on every board. There's pro scouts know. They know about issues before they surface professionally. And I'll say this again. I think, I'm not saying it's a demo. You don't have to tear the house down, but the kitchen needs work. So does the roof and a couple of bathrooms. It's not just a tile job or fix and clean up the garage. So here's Patrick Mahomes on potentially missing the postseason.
We were in unprecedented territory. It's a place that we haven't been since I've been here. And so I think you lean on the guys that have kind of battled through adversity and came out better on the other side. And so when I look at it now, it's like, I mean, I don't know what the percentages are, but I know they're not high. And I think it'd be special if we get into the playoffs and can make a run. So why not give ourselves a chance to do that? And we have to start by winning football games.
For the record, 2018 to 2022, before the big Mahomes deal felt like it kicked in, this team averaged 30 points a game. The last 3 years, they're averaging a touchdown less a game. Name the Chiefs' top 10 players right now. And I'm not talking on resume or legacy. I'm not talking about Travis Kelsey just because he has a great legacy. I'm saying name their top 10 players. Chris Jones is not a top 10 D lineman right now, and he's one of them. And he's near the top. Name their top 10 players. Now go name the Rams, the Lions, the Eagles' top 10 players. Hell, go name the Houston Texans' top 10 players. Name Seattle's top 10 players. Name the Chiefs.
Okay, I believe we're veering too far into extremes again, which is something we consistently do. 1 minute, the Chiefs are viewed as invincible, destined to win 8 consecutive Super Bowls. The next, the dynasty is declared finished. Then, almost inexplicably, 2 weeks later, the narrative shifts to Kansas City being a touchdown superior to every other NFL team. And now, we're back to discussions about needing to tear everything down. Everyone just needs to take a collective breath. It's amusing how often I say that. We need to step back, pause, and slow things down. I wish I could apply that principle more in my personal life, but I struggle to. Perhaps that's why I'm so drawn to this platform. It's the one space where I can genuinely advocate for perspective and a measured approach. I certainly can't manage it elsewhere. In all seriousness, things are not optimal for the Kansas City Chiefs at this moment. Regarding the situation with the offensive lineman and his draft status, not being on everyone's board, Josh's comments, etc., my understanding is that was primarily due to injury concerns. I'm not privy to any personal life details. I know he had some things going on. I don't typically delve deeply into personal matters unless they become public in a significant way. So, unless there's information I'm unaware of, something more substantial like a Rashee Rice type situation with legal implications, or an incident involving a player like Xavier Worthy, I tend to set it aside. If it's personal, like a family illness, that's private. I don't feel a strong need to investigate someone's personal life unless it involves serious misconduct with tangible repercussions. So, I'll just put that aspect to the side. The point is, the Kansas City Chiefs did not construct their dynasty by accident. What Colin mentioned about them getting the green light for roughly the last 7 years holds truth. They appeared to receive every conceivable break and fortunate bounce. I've discussed before that every championship team needs that element. There isn't a single Super Bowl, World Series, or any seasonal champion that doesn't benefit from some good fortune. It's an inevitable part of the journey. However, the Chiefs seem to accumulate those breaks consecutively, year after year. This isn't to label their victories as merely lucky. The Eagles needed breaks for their title. The Rams needed breaks. Everyone does. But not every franchise experiences that sustained level of favorable fortune the way Kansas City did. And currently, that tide has shifted. This shift coincides with some roster challenges. Patrick Mahomes is not performing at the astronomical level we've come to expect. We can point to offensive line issues or receiver deficiencies, but individually, he hasn't been at his absolute peak. Despite this, when I examine this organization, I still see Andy Reid. I still see Mahomes. I still see Steve Spagnuolo. I maintained this belief throughout the offseason, the early part of the season, and really for most of this year, until it started to feel like the Chiefs might genuinely struggle to navigate their way out. And honestly, I still think they can. My confidence has always been rooted in that foundational trio, Andy, Spags, and Mahomes. You have the three most critical components: a brilliant head coach, who is also the offensive architect and play caller, a generational quarterback, and an exceptional defensive coordinator. That covers about 80% of what you need. The remainder involves fleshing out the roster to a competent level. So, can the Chiefs retool and reclaim the suffocating dominance they exhibited for years? That seems more challenging now. Firstly, you must have some breaks go your way again. Secondly, you need to hit on some major acquisitions. You need to find another Travis Kelce-level talent. You need to find another dynamic playmaker, a Tyreek Hill type. Even though he hasn't been there the whole time, you still need that wow factor. You need to secure the next Justin Jefferson, the next Brock Bowers. You must identify those cornerstone pieces. They haven't fully succeeded in doing that recently. Furthermore, any rebuilding or retooling will now occur during a phase where Mahomes, while still elite, likely won't possess the identical physical prowess and mobility of his 2018-2020 self. This isn't to say he won't be spectacular or incapable of devastating opponents. He absolutely will be. But if this reset begins now and takes a couple of years, you'll be working with a different iteration of Mahomes. The encouraging part is that Mahomes wants this more than anything. And with Andy Reid guiding him, I firmly believe Mahomes can and will adapt his game. I don't perceive him as stubborn in that regard. If he recognizes the need to become more of a pocket passer, to throw the ball away more frequently, or to be more selective in extending plays, I trust him to put in the work and execute. I equally trust Andy Reid to guide that transition. This isn't 2018 anymore. We need you to play differently, and here's how. I expect Reid to have that roadmap. The equation changes if you start losing an Andy Reid or a Steve Spagnuolo. Then you enter uncertain territory regarding coaching philosophy and defensive scheme consistency. I don't know how long Reid plans to coach, but I recall Mahomes being asked about the duration of this dynasty. His immediate, unequivocal response was, "As long as Andy's here." That underscores everything. Reid is the mastermind calling the plays and architecting the solutions. Give him the pieces, especially the quarterback, and he can make it work. So, with that trio intact, simply constructing a sufficiently competent roster should yield success. My intuition tells me the Chiefs are likely to settle into a tier with teams like the Bills, 49ers, Ravens, Rams, and Eagles. For a long time, Kansas City felt like it occupied a separate stratum due to its consistent championship accomplishments. But look at those other franchises over recent years: the Eagles, 49ers, Bills, Ravens. They've had strong coach-quarterback continuity, like in Baltimore and Buffalo, or navigated transitions adeptly, like San Francisco. Since 2022, the Eagles have been a powerhouse. These are all elite teams with respected coaching. No one dismisses John Harbaugh or Sean McDermott as incompetent or on the hot seat for immediate firing. These organizations are consistently competitive and in the mix. Chiefs fans have rightly been supremely confident, but the Ravens were legitimate Super Bowl contenders in 2023. The Bills were a play away in the 13 seconds game in 2021. The Eagles were a field goal away in 2022. The 49ers took them to overtime. These teams have been consistently excellent, yet there was always a sense they hadn't reached that distinct, separate echelon the Chiefs inhabited. A difference in aura, energy, and proven clutch performance. What feels most realistic now is that Kansas City integrates into that group of perennial contenders. I'm sure I'm omitting a couple of other well-run organizations, but those are the prominent examples. These are teams that are contenders. They possess talent, make shrewd moves in free agency and the draft, and are structured to overcome an occasional down year or setback. The Rams, Eagles, Bills, Ravens, 49ers, these resilient, well-managed franchises can weather storms. Contrast that with a team like the Carolina Panthers during their peak with Cam Newton. They had a run, but it felt more accidental than intentionally sustainable, lacking the deep infrastructure to maintain excellence. Consider the Broncos with Peyton Manning at the tail end. Once that central figure declines, the structure can collapse if it wasn't broadly built. The Panthers are a prime example of a flash that couldn't be sustained. The teams that endure are those with established top-tier ownership, management, coaching, and quarterback play. They aren't grappling with how to prolong a 40-year-old quarterback's career or questioning if their coach is merely good enough. They have the Shanahans, the McVays, the Reeds, definitive elites. That probable integration into that upper echelon of contenders, rather than remaining a singular superpower, seems the more realistic path. However, here's the fascinating part. If Mahomes can still be that Mahomes, and if Reed and Spagnuolo haven't lost a step, retaining their strategic sharpness, then even settling into that elite contender tier should still be enough to elevate them above the others. Why? Because you still have the best head coach, quarterback, defensive coordinator trio by a significant margin. It's not remotely close. No other team boasts a combination that even warrants comparison. But the question becomes, could one of those other teams with a very strong trio, say a great HC, a great QB, and a great DC, and a superior overall roster, simply become too much for Kansas City to overcome? Or is there an emerging coach-quarterback duo entering their prime? Imagine, hypothetically, a team like the Patriots with Drake May and a coach like Mike Vrabel with a strong defensive mind, just as the Reed-Spags-Mahomes core is striving to maintain its peak. That dynamic is worth serious discussion. It's ironic because I'm often labeled as biased against the Chiefs and Mahomes, accused of being a hater. It's somewhat amusing because I understand why some might perceive it that way, though I firmly maintain it's not true. I've stated this before. Mahomes is genuinely one of my favorite players to watch, and Andy Reid is arguably my favorite coach of all time. When I declare them the best, it's not some obligatory statement, it's my deeply held conviction. I have a time-stamped note on my phone from after the 2019 AFC Championship game, a lengthy memo to my family explaining why we should all root for the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. I was genuinely upset when they lost to the Buccaneers. My engagement with this channel, and some of my analytical critiques, might rub some fans the wrong way. But the reality is, if anything, I'm biased toward their historic greatness. It's still difficult for me to accept that they might not find a way through this. Of course, nothing lasts forever. I'm not ready to relinquish that belief yet, especially when I consider the competition. The Bills still haven't broken through. The Ravens haven't either. The only other franchises with a truly trustworthy recent championship track record are the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams. However, Matthew Stafford's career is in its twilight, and the Eagles are currently navigating uncertainties with Jalen Hurts. If those teams need to retool, they have the infrastructure to return to the top. But teams like the Bills and Ravens, despite having brilliant quarterbacks, haven't been able to cross the final threshold. The Steelers have been trying for a decade. The Chargers and Broncos remain in wait-and-see mode. They don't have that established championship-caliber track record yet, unlike the Chiefs, Rams, and Eagles, and the 49ers, though they haven't sealed the deal recently. This context matters significantly. Even if the Chiefs cannot fully recapture their past invincibility, they should undeniably remain a top-tier contender. Are they more susceptible to a divisional round upset, akin to the Rams' loss to the Eagles last year? Absolutely. But as Colin noted, the Rams were essentially one play away from potentially returning to the Super Bowl. That might be the territory Kansas City enters. A team that is always dangerous, always in the mix, but perhaps no longer an overwhelming favorite. I'll conclude with this. Unless I become thoroughly convinced that Mahomes has demonstrably declined, which I'm not, I lean toward optimism. I believe this is more about roster construction and a cyclical downturn. However, a part of me does wonder, is Mahomes just not quite the same force? It's a question that applies to other elite, physically imposing quarterbacks as well. Josh Allen, as brilliant as he is, hasn't consistently replicated his 2021-22 peak form. Lamar Jackson, while dealing with injuries, also hasn't looked exactly the same. These are hypermobile, aggressive quarterbacks who have absorbed substantial punishment over many high-stakes games in brutal conditions. That wear and tear accumulates. We're in a peculiar transitional period. I encourage more grounded, nuanced dialogue instead of careening between extremes. The Chiefs will bounce back and dominate next year, versus the dynasty is dead, Mahomes will never win again. I recall an ESPN analyst years ago declaring LeBron James would never win another championship just before he won several more. Similar pronouncements were made about Steph Curry. We don't need such absolute, grandiose proclamations. If the Chiefs' core had been reliant on just a few specific stars, Kelsey, Hill, Mahomes, Chris Jones, and those players aged out or departed, I'd be far more concerned. But to me, the true, enduring core has always been Mahomes, Spagnuolo, and Reed, with Kelsey being a monumental part, of course. That foundational trio remains, and as long as it does, they warrant the benefit of the doubt. Those are my reflections. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What's your perspective on the Kansas City Chiefs? Do you believe they're facing a comprehensive rebuild, or is it merely a retooling phase, as Colin suggested? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single comment, whether you agree or disagree. Let's foster some discussions, engage in some spirited debates, but ultimately, let's enjoy the conversation. Please consider subscribing. We're building a fantastic community here, and I'd love for you to be part of it. We're creating a space for connection and shared excitement about the game. Also, a thumbs up on the video genuinely helps with visibility. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.